Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we are 1 month in with my Apple Watch, and I figured it was time to do a follow-up to let you know the things that I like and don't like about it. And believe it or not, I actually like it better than I thought I would. And for those of you who have pegged me as the Apple fanboy because I have all this Apple stuff around me, well, you can make your own judgments. But to be perfectly honest with you, I really wasn't all that excited about the watch as a product because I haven't worn a watch in, probably since I was in elementary school. So I haven't really needed to have a watch in my life. So this is the first time probably in 20 years or more that I've had a watch on my wrist every day for a month. And there's a lot to like about it. In many ways, it does feel like a 1.0 Apple product because it is lacking some features. It does everything it does do very well and elegantly, but it does feel like there's more that they can do with it that they're not yet doing. It's holding up pretty nicely. I got the Sport Edition, so this is the one with the gray casing, but it's aluminum and glass, so it's very similar to the Apple Watch in its overall, or the Apple phone, the iPhone, in its overall design. So the screen is starting to show a couple of hairline scratches. I get those a lot on my iPhone, which has pretty much the same materials on the screen. It's just glass, whatever they infuse it with, but it's still glass, and it's still, if you get sand around it or something, it might put some hairline scratches on it. You really can't see them on the camera at all, but I'm noticing them when I'm out in certain light. So it's definitely got the same properties as that. I didn't want to buy the more expensive watch because knowing Apple and what they do, next year's watch is going to be a huge jump over this year's version. So I figured I would go with the cheap one to start, and then maybe go with the more expensive one later. The stainless steel version, which is the next step up from the Sport Edition, has a sapphire face on it, so it doesn't scratch as easy. But it is very sturdy. I've been whacking it into stuff, and it really hasn't scuffed up at all, and it's holding itself together very nicely. The band is not as stiff as it was when I first got it, so I really had some issues getting it on initially because it was so stiff. Just trying to get the little holes in the bottom here to line up and stick into the slot there. But it's been much easier and much more comfortable to wear over the course of the last month. So it doesn't feel like it's going to fall apart. It just actually feels better and broken in, which is a good sign that it's going to hold up for a while. My wife has the 38 millimeter version, which I reviewed when I did the initial review, so you saw the size difference. So she really likes it, and she's a black belt in karate. She got her second stripe this past week, and she wears it in class for sparring and everything, and it's taken a beating, and it looks brand new still. So I think the build quality, even on these lesser expensive versions, is pretty good, and I think it's probably a safe bet just to go with the Sport Edition initially, especially if you think you'll be buying another watch in the future. They'll just probably upgrade it and make it better over time. The battery life is awesome, so I turned this watch on at 7:30 this morning, at least took it off the charger at that time. I still have half a charge left, and I've been looking at it, and I'm using it. I'm actually using it a lot more throughout the day than I did when I first got it, because I'm finding the things now that are very useful to me. And I found what I did especially was get the notifications from my phone. Only the ones that I really want to see on the watch were the ones that I'm sending over to it. And you can configure all of that in the app, and I showed that in the initial review. You really should take the time when you get it to figure out exactly what notifications you want, because I've got it down to a point now where only the most important things that I need to see are coming over to the watch from the phone. And that's been awesome because I can get like breaking news from the New York Times. I've been doing my task management app. Some of the things that I really want to see that are important enough to disturb me when I'm not looking at my phone are coming over on the watch, and that has been a really neat thing to have there. So that's been good. Some other smart things too, like I've been making phone calls on it, and that's been really neat. So in my house, just because of where my kitchen's located and where I tend to be, my phone tends to stay on the kitchen counter a lot of the time. And if I'm upstairs in the baby's room or something and I get a phone call, I used to have to run downstairs and try to get the phone. Now I can actually take the call on my watch, and it's been working throughout most of the house because the Bluetooth can reach from that distance. It doesn't go all the way around my house, which is unfortunate. I would have loved for that Wi-Fi passover thing to work, where if I fell out of Bluetooth range for Wi-Fi to work, but it's very limited on Wi-Fi, and the phone function doesn't work, Siri doesn't work, the apps don't work. So it would have been cooler if they could, or maybe they still could do this, get it to work over Wi-Fi as well as it does over Bluetooth, especially if the phone and watch are on the same network, because that would add some convenience. But in my house, it's been great just based on the topography of my house here to be able to do a lot of the things on the watch that if my phone isn't with me, I can get the phone call done or the text message done. And one of the cool things about the text messaging is it's got some intelligence to it. So let me pull up a text message that I sent to myself here. And so I texted my sister earlier, here's me, and I said, hey, do you want, I've said, this is an example. I said, hey, do you want a hamburger or a hot dog? It's one of those questions you get while you're meeting up with family or something. And if I tap on reply here, what's cool is that it will kind of parse the message and then give me some options for what I can reply with. So it does, it's smart enough to say, hey, maybe he wants to answer with these two things up front here. And so rather than have to type out, or you can't type out, but rather than speak into it and have to go through the whole text translation thing, I can just tap on my response and send it on my way there. So I thought that was really cool to be able to do that kind of thing. And it works with text messages or the Apple iMessage also. So it just kind of goes through the phone and completes that transaction, which there goes the message, which has been really handy to have. So that's been a neat feature. In fact, we were going out to dinner one night and we were meeting up with some friends and they weren't sure if my daughter was ready for a booster seat yet or if she was still in a high chair, and I was able to just tap the response back to them. But the problem though is that if the response that I have here isn't what I'm looking for, the only option that I have is to reply with voice. So I have to pull up the microphone here then do the Siri thing to be able to respond to the person with something more customized. You can, of course, customize some of the pre-baked responses, but not every one of those is going to work in every situation. So that's been the biggest thing. So I was in a meeting and I got a text message that I would have loved to have banged out a response for on the watch without having to take my phone out and everyone looking at me taking the phone out. So I think if they had some other alternative text input on here, that would be a lot better. So that's been a frustration point. Another frustration for me is the apps and the slowness of them, at least because they're kind of relying, or actually totally relying on the phone for those transactions. They're running faster now that I am doing this review, but for example, when you tap on an app, it does take a little bit of time for it to boot up. And this is actually a faster example of that. Let me go over to maybe the New York Times or something I haven't run in a while. And you can see what the load time is. So it does take a little bit to get everything pulled up. Sometimes it's longer than other times. But this is a great example of just having to kind of sit here and wait. And sometimes, especially on the weather app, it'll sit there spinning for a while. And if I'm like further away from the phone sometimes or whatever, and it really does take a while, and you get to the point where your wrist gets tired waiting for the app to pop up. So those sorts of things where it's because it's so dependent on the phone, if it can't really get a signal or it's just having trouble communicating, those things tend to take a little bit longer than I'd like and kind of detracts from the experience a little bit. It was what I was expecting, but the important thing to note with apps on the watch is that just about all of them are, again, relying on the phone. So the app on the phone has to be loaded up internally on the phone. If it hasn't yet been loaded, it pulls that data down to the phone. The phone then repurposes that data for the watch and passes it over. So there's a bit of a process to it. But the one app that really works nicely is the fitness app, and that actually runs native to the watch. So even if you're out of phone range, this will still work. So you have two things on fitness. The first is your activity monitor, which does your heart rate as well as your steps. And so it's kind of like a little fitness band kind of thing, but it's integrated right into the watch. But what's cool though is when you start doing the workouts, which I'll show you in a second, it uses the GPS from the phone to really get an accurate idea as to what your stride is like. So even when you're done being outside and inside, it'll use that data that it accumulated on you while you were doing a outdoor run or walk to determine when you're inside how many miles you're walking throughout the day. So that's been really handy there. So that's pretty cool. Now, of course, at the end of the day, my wife and I always compare our little numbers here, and she's always doing better than I am, but I'll have to keep improving. What's also cool about it is that I set a goal for my active calories, I think at 400 calories a day. And what happened was I initially set it to like 300 because I figured I'll just start small and kind of work my way up. And it was neat. I got through the week and did 300 every day, and the watch then said, maybe you should set your goal for 450 or 400 next week and see how you do. So that's what I did. So it kind of pushes you a little bit more. And I'm finding, I think maybe just because the watch is new perhaps, but I'm finding when I'm out walking the dog or doing something, I'm doing an extra lap around the neighborhood. I've really been trying to get my numbers up a little bit. And maybe I just have the psychology to, as I like to look at data, to maybe get that data on my watch moving in a good direction and making the effort to do that. So that's been pretty cool. So the workout function is also something that can run on the watch without, oops, I hit the wrong button here, without having to do anything with the phone. So if you don't have your phone with you, you can, of course, just use the workout thing. So let me show you how this works. So what you do is you boot up the workout app, and it gives you a couple of options here for different types of workouts that you might be doing. They have options for like stair steppers, rowers, and ellipticals. I've heard these aren't as good at detecting your actual activity as you might think. So I think they still have to tweak some of that. These are hard things to measure because the watch doesn't have all the sensors it needs to kind of figure out what you're doing in those activities, but it will measure your heart rate constantly in all of these to kind of detect your calories and whatnot. So if I select outdoor walk here, what will happen is I can set a calorie goal for the walk, and then I can hit start here. There's some other options here too. I could do it based on distance or time. You can maybe speed up your timing there. The longest distance you can set, or you can just have it be an open thing where there's no goal. But if I set perhaps this calorie goal here and hit start, what'll happen is it'll say get ready and count down, and then you can start doing your workout. And what it's going to do is once it starts, it's continually measuring your heart rate. So normally it's doing like a heart rate monitor every 10 minutes or so. During this workout activity, it's constant. And then when you're done, you just touch it on there. You can pause it too. You can click on end here, and then it'll give you a summary of your total workout. And if you hit save, it'll then save it on the watch, and then when it gets back in range of the phone, it'll pass the data over to the phone. And that's what's been really cool about it, is that once your phone is paired up with a watch, with your watch, I guess, you will get this awesome app on here. It's called the Activity app, and this is what it'll keep a log of all of your fitness activity throughout the month, so you can get a really good feel for everything you've done every day. And so, for example, I can tap on maybe Saturday. We had a nice walk with the dog. It'll give me the full summary of the day, and then any workouts that I did, it'll keep cataloged down here, and I've got a full kind of display as to everything that I did on there. So they've done a really nice job with this, and that's what's funny about this, is that this is the one app that doesn't really depend on the phone all the time, and it's the best part about the watch. So I think once the watch can start doing more things on its own, it's going to become incredibly more useful. But that's that. And then the other thing they have is the health app here. And on the health app, you can get a feel for your health data, in particular the heart rate. So every 10 minutes, the watch is taking your heart rate and passing it over to the phone, and it's keeping a lot of running data as to what your resting and active heart rates are. So this is my heart rate monitor over the course of the month, the highs and the lows, which is pretty cool. But you could also even go into show all data and get all of the stuff built down from there. One more thing on the app front that I thought was just kind of cool. So if you ever played Trivia Crack, which is a pretty addictive little app here that you play with your friends with trivia, they have put in a watch version. Now, it does require the phone in order to work, but it is completely the app that you would normally play on the phone. You can play completely on the watch here. So I'm playing around with my friend here. So let's see, I think we'll look at developmental psychology for that maybe. There we go. And I've been able to completely play this without having to pick the phone up. So there are some cool things like this heart rate monitor, like the little apps that are running here, that I think once they can start doing some native things on the watch itself, should be pretty cool. So the big question is whether or not it's worth the $400. I mean, there are less expensive Android Wear watches that pair up, not with iPhones, unfortunately, but with Android phones that will do very much the same things that you just saw here. And I think that's really what's nice about these wearables, is that there are some conveniences, especially related to messaging and phone calls, that I found to be really great. And I think a lot of those features are available on the Android watches. I haven't actually looked at any of those yet. I would like to in the near future. I also have one of the new Pebbles coming in also, which will give you like a full week or so of battery life. So there are some other options out there, but I kind of really been liking this more so than I thought I would. In fact, I'm in the habit now of just putting it on every morning, if for no other reason to get my health tracked, but even just having all my calendar data accessible to me, and just all the little tiny conveniences that come out of getting things pushed to the watch have really made it something that is now part of my workflow. I can live without it. I can't say that for my phone. I really need my phone throughout the day. My iPad is almost there to the point of not live without, but not quite. But so it's not really like a life-changing device for me just yet, but it's making my life a little bit better. And I think that's what's been pretty cool about the Apple Watch so far. I'd love to get more questions from you. If there's things you want to see specifically, leave them in the comments below, and I will do some follow-ups. This is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.